I never thought that someone close to me could publicly humiliate me and my son. When my sister cruelly mocked me and my son at her own wedding, I realized that this day would change everything forever. There I was, sitting in the third row at my younger sister's wedding, wearing the only formal dress I had, trying with all my might to blend into a crowd of people who seemed so polished, so perfect. My son Jack sat beside me, swinging his legs under the table in a little suit I had spent nearly all my remaining money on. He looked so proud to be there. He thought this day would make us feel like part of the family again. I probably hoped so too. Emily, my sister, floated around the hall like a movie star. She always had that energy, beautiful, charming, adored by everyone, especially by our mother. Compliments and comparisons were hers. The spotlight belonged to her. I had learned to live in the shadows. Still, I came. I smiled, applauded when they kissed. I kept my voice steady when people asked, "You're the older sister? You wouldn't say you have an 8-year-old child." Then the speeches began. The best friend of the groom spoke first. A few funny anecdotes, light laughter. Then it was Emily's turn. I expected something sentimental, something about love, maybe about how we grew up together. I even raised my glass in anticipation. I should have known better. She raised a crystal glass and smiled at the crowd. "I want to thank everyone who came," she began, beaming. "This means so much to me. And of course, I want to say something special about my older sister." I turned to Jack and smiled at him. He looked at me excitedly. For a moment, I believed she would say something kind. Emily continued, "She has always been a role model for me. She's a single mother, strong, independent, and clearly no longer needed by anyone." The room exploded with laughter. My stomach turned. I thought I misheard, but she kept smiling, as if telling the most charming joke in the world. Some guests looked embarrassed, but most laughed louder, clinking glasses as if it were something amusing. I didn't know where to look. My heart pounded in my ears. Jack tugged my sleeve and whispered, "Mom, why did she say that about you?" Before I could answer, my mother, seizing the moment, loudly added from her table, "She's like a used product, but still looks decent for her age." Another burst of laughter, even sharper this time. It was a laugh that cuts like a knife, one that says, "Now everyone sees you differently, not as a guest, not as a family member, but as a laughingstock, an object of pity and shame." I couldn't move or breathe. My face burned, but I refused to let tears fall. Not in front of my son, not before them. My fingers clenched the napkin beneath the table, gripping it like a lifeline. I looked around, searching for someone to meet my gaze and offer even a crumb of compassion. My grandfather Charles stared at his plate. My cousin Jenna smirked at her phone screen. Even my Uncle Tom, who once told me I reminded him of my late father, didn't look up. Jack looked lost, his small brows furrowed. His eyes held confusion and pain, and that broke me. No words, no laughter, no shame. But the fact that my son saw it all, trying to understand why his mother, the woman who kissed his scraped knees and stayed up late helping with math, had become the family joke. I wanted to leave. I wanted to grab Jack's hand, walk out, and never look back. But something inside me froze. I wanted to speak. I wanted to defend myself, to tell them they didn't know half of what I had endured, what I had been through. But my lips were dry. My legs trembled under the table. And before I could move, I heard a chair scrape back. Lucas, the groom, perfect, flawless, rose slowly. He didn't look pleased. He didn't look at Emily or the guests. His eyes immediately found mine, and something in his face made the whole room freeze. In that moment, I knew something had to happen. Neither salvation, nor fight, nor revenge. People often think being the older sister means paving the way, being a role model. But in our family, I was more a warning than an example. My name is Sarah. I'm 34 years old. I'm a single mother and the black sheep of our family. I live in a small 2-room apartment in the suburbs with my son Jack. He's 8 years old. He's the best thing that ever happened to me, and the only reason I return to the rooms where I was once made to feel worthless. I work 2 jobs, mornings at a local cafe, evenings at the front desk of a small hotel. My life isn't glamorous, but it's mine. On Saturdays, I make pancakes for Jack, sew patches on his jeans, and he calls me his superhero. That's enough for me to keep going. But being a single mother in my family meant being a failure. My mother Linda reminded me of that at every family gathering. Appearance and reputation were everything to her. That's why she says Emily's wedding is the family name's second chance. Emily is 5 years younger than me. She's beautiful, successful, always got everything without effort, and acted like she deserved it. She's the golden girl. Linda adores her. If Emily sneezed, my mother quickly handed her a silk handkerchief. If I got sick, she said, take some vitamins and stop playing the drama queen. When I got pregnant with Jack, everything changed. I was 25. I was in love with a man who promised to be with me. At 5 months, he just disappeared. No note, no explanation, just gone. My family didn't ask a single question. They didn't offer help. Only silence, judgment, and we warned you. But I had Jack, and when I first held him, all the cruel words they ever said became white noise to me. Still, deep down, I hoped someday they would see me as more than just a single mother, as a person worthy of love. Maybe that's why, when I got the invitation to Emily's wedding, I agreed. Even though I wasn't included in the bridal party, even though my name was misspelled on the RSVP, even though I had to rent a dress and do my hair by myself in the bathroom mirror while Jack rehearsed his smile with a tie. I told myself it was for closure, maybe their quiet sign of reconciliation. The venue was stunning. White roses everywhere, tableware with gold accents, a string quartet. Music played softly in the distance. Emily looked like she stepped off the pages of a bridal magazine, all smiles and sparkle, basking in compliments and flashes of cameras. When she passed by me, her smile flickered slightly. "You came?" she said, as if surprised to see me. She looked at Jack and added, "He's grown so much." No hugs, no warmth, just obligatory words. And back to the spotlight again. Linda barely glanced my way, passing by as if I were just one of the waitresses. But Jack was glowing with happiness. To him, the chandelier looked like a spaceship. He whispered that Emily looked like a real princess. And when I saw how happy he was just to be there, I decided to stay for the reception, even though the familiar sting of alienation was already creeping into my heart. We found our table, number 9, almost by the restrooms. I smiled quietly. How symbolic. We ate salads. I helped Jack wipe chocolate mousse off his tie. I avoided my mother's gaze and tried not to hear when my name was whispered amid the clinking glasses. Then the speeches began, and I knew this night wouldn't be about family unity or forgiveness. It would become another stage for Emily to shine, and me to be her joke. It all started as weddings often do: warmth, sweetness, a little theatrical. Emily stood tall, holding a glass of champagne in a perfectly manicured hand. Her dress shimmered under the chandeliers, and the room fell silent in anticipation. She smiled and paused so everyone could settle. "I want to thank all of you for coming," she began. "This is the happiest day of my life, and I'm surrounded by people who mean everything to me." I watched from the back table, trying to convince myself I was among those people. Jack sat on the edge of his chair, legs swinging, enchanted by the whole fairy tale. Emily continued, talking about her new husband, Lucas, about love, fate, and time. I relaxed a bit. Maybe this speech wouldn't turn cruel after all. Then her tone changed, and with a sly smile she said, "I especially want to thank my older sister. You've always been such a strong example for me." The spotlight shifted. I felt the gazes turn to me. I straightened, smiled politely. Emily went on. Her voice was light but sharp. "She's the bravest woman I know. She raised a child alone. No husband, no partner, just herself. And whoever else was kind enough to watch the kid." Laughter filled the room. My stomach twisted. "But seriously," Emily added, "it's amazing how she manages. A single mom, unwanted by anyone, and still hoeing up here." The laughter was real, loud, merciless. I felt the air leave my lungs. My cheeks burned. My hands froze, clutching the napkin in my lap. I looked at Jack. He frowned, confused and scared, trying to understand why everyone was laughing at his mom. Then the worst happened. My mother Linda laughed louder than anyone. She leaned toward her neighbors and said loudly enough for all to hear, "Used goods, but still knows how to present herself." Another wave of laughter, cruel and unrestrained. My vision blurred. It felt like a slap. But no one touched me. Everyone just laughed as if it were normal, as if it were acceptable. To mock a woman who had worked tirelessly for nearly 10 years to raise her son with dignity and warmth. As if being alone meant being worthless. I looked down at Jack. His smile faded. He pressed against me and whispered, "Why did she say that? What does it mean?" I wanted to answer, but no words came. I couldn't protect him from that moment, couldn't shield him from seeing how our family really saw me. Such pain can't be hidden. My heart pounded wildly. I searched for an escape or someone who would step in and say, "Enough." But no one stood. Some looked awkward, but they stayed silent, eyes fixed on their glasses, plates, or phones. Even Grandpa Charles, who once called me his little lion cub, looked away. He was there, but not with me. I was alone again. You see, I could handle it if it was only about me. I was used to swallowing this treatment. I could have smiled, taken Jack's hand, and quietly left with my head held high. But seeing the confusion in my son's eyes, watching him struggle to understand why people who just applauded and toasted suddenly laughed at his mom, something inside me broke. I stood up. Not because I knew what to say, not because I wanted a scene. I just had to leave that room. I needed air. I needed to breathe without suffocating under the shame they dumped on me. I pushed back my chair, hands trembling. Then I heard a chair scrape behind the head table. Lucas, the groom, stood up. He looked pale. His jaw was clenched. He took the microphone from Emily without asking. The room fell silent, as if the temperature dropped sharply. The laughter stopped. The whispers died. Only silence remained. I realized what was about to happen wasn't part of anyone's plan. Lucas stood, still leaning on the table with one hand, tightly gripping the microphone with the other. His eyes locked on mine, not on Emily, not on Linda, not on the laughing crowd, only me. For a moment, I thought he'd joke and ease the tension, say something charming to lighten the room. That's how it usually goes in our family. Sweep it under the rug. Did you like pretend nothing happened. Call it humor. Call it tradition. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. He didn't smile or laugh, so you don't miss the next interesting story. His face was tense with something I couldn't immediately identify. Maybe anger, but deeper. A mix of disappointment and disbelief. Before he could speak, I pushed back my chair and took Jack's hand. I was ready to leave quietly with dignity. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing my tears or defeat. I'd done it before. I could do it again. But as I took a step, Lucas's deep, firm, calm voice stopped me. "Sarah, don't leave." I froze. Everyone turned to him. A whisper swept through the room like wind through dry leaves. Emily tensed. Linda narrowed her eyes. The DJ reached for the controls, but froze as Lucas raised his hand. He looked at no one but me. "I can't pretend I'm okay with what just happened," he said. "I won't stand here and allow such cruelty to be passed off as a joke." A heavy silence hung in the room. Lucas walked slowly forward. He took his time. Every step seemed deliberate, as if breaking through the weight of the room. He stopped by our table where I sat with Jack and our half-eaten salads, looking directly at the guests. "The past year, as we planned this wedding, I heard a lot about family," he said. "About appearance, tradition, loyalty. But what I just witnessed was not family. It was a mockery disguised as a celebration." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Some people glanced at each other sideways. Linda and others stared into their glasses, but no one spoke. Lucas turned to Emily. "You mocked your sister for raising a child alone without any help. You laughed, and worse, you made her son watch it." Emily opened her mouth but couldn't speak. Lucas didn't wait for her reply. "She didn't ask for this fate, but she managed. She came today, sat at the back of the hall, smiled, brought her son to witness your big day, and you turned it into a joke." I had never seen Emily look so small. Lucas turned back to the crowd. "She didn't come here to defend herself. She didn't ask for sympathy. She never needed a stage. But I won't stay silent, because if I'm going to join a family where cruelty is seen as humor and shame as tradition, then I need to think about what kind of person I want to be." A sigh ran through the room. A woman at the next table whispered, "It's true. Someone dropped a fork." Jack looked at me wide-eyed. I didn't know what to do. I came here hoping just to get through the evening. I never expected someone to stand up for me, especially like that, in front of everyone. Lucas looked at my son and nodded slightly. "Your mom is the strongest person in this room. Don't forget that." He turned back to the crowd. "I think I figured it out." He carefully put down the microphone, walked past Emily without looking at her, and left the room. I stood frozen, clutching Jack's hand tightly. The music didn't start again. The crowd didn't move, as if the air had been sucked out. The fairy tale shattered into pieces. But for the first time in a long while, I wasn't the one broken. When Lucas left the hall, it was as if someone flipped a switch. No one applauded, no one cheered. The only sounds were the faint hum of air conditioners and the clink of a spoon falling on glass. Guests sat motionless. Their eyes flicked between me, Emily, and the door through which Lucas disappeared. Emily stood by the head table as if slapped in the face. Her perfect posture broke. Her shoulders drooped under the weight of what had happened. She looked around the room, but the faces staring at her no longer smiled. Some looked shocked, some embarrassed, some angry. But not at Lucas, at her. Linda was the first to speak. She stood sharply, the chair screeched back. "Ingrate!" she exclaimed. "He shamed you in front of everyone. Typical. Just as selfish as your sister." But her voice no longer sounded powerful. All her control over the room vanished. Her words fell into emptiness. I didn't respond, and I didn't need to. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel small under her heavy gaze. I turned to Jack. He gave me a confused look. "Are we leaving?" he whispered. "Yes, sweetheart," I answered, brushing hair from his forehead. We went home. I stood tall, holding his hand tightly as we walked toward the exit. People parted before us. Some avoided eye contact. Others looked like they wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. As we headed out, I heard someone call me. "Sarah?" I turned. It was my grandfather, Charles. His pale eyes were red from tears. He slowly stood and took a step toward me. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, voice trembling. "I should have stopped this years ago." I nodded, unable to trust myself to speak. I wasn't angry at him for his silence. I understood the price silence sometimes carries for some people. I lived it firsthand. I wasn't angry, but I wasn't going to carry their guilt anymore. Outside, the air was cool and fresh. Jack held my hand tightly. The wedding was over. I looked at him. Yes, I smiled. I think it ended exactly as it should have. We drove home in silence. The radio was off. Only the sound of tires and Jack's light tapping on the armrest. That night, I stood at his door for a long time after kissing him on the forehead and wishing him good night. He didn't ask any more questions. He didn't have to. The next morning, I woke up to a dozen missed calls from unknown numbers. Cousins, even a couple of guests I barely knew. I ignored them all. My phone buzzed again, a message from a friend who was at the wedding. "Someone recorded Lucas's speech. It's already online. Over 50,000 views. You have to read the comments. People are supporting you." I opened the video. There he was, Lucas, calm and determined, standing before the whole hall. And there I was, frozen in the frame, holding Jack's hand. The comments were full of support. "This person is a hero. She deserved better." I cried watching it. Every single mother got a piece of justice today. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just felt silence, as if something that had gripped me inside for years finally let go. That week, Emily tried to twist the story. She said Lucas had overreacted, that it was just a joke, that people were being too sensitive. But the truth had spoken, and no one laughed anymore. A few days later, A small bouquet of wildflowers arrived at my apartment with no note, just a small card that read, "Little Lion." I didn't need to ask who it was from. The wedding didn't happen, but something far more important did. For the first time, I was not the one carrying shame. I didn't have to apologize. I walked out of that hall with my son, with dignity, and with my head held high. And somewhere out there, someone reminded a full room, and maybe the whole internet, what it means to be strong. Did you like the story? Write your opinion in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next interesting story. See you tomorrow.